Oh, hello, yes. Well, I don't care. I'm on holiday, mostly. Yeah, it can rain. I don't care. I'm going to stay in bed. I don't care. Did I mention I don't care? Yeah, well, I don't. Some things I do care about, though. Yeah, rumbling story. Rumbling story about GB News interviewing an autistic bloke. You may well have seen this. I sort of managed to yesterday to actually hit the newspapers, where Steve Eddington, who is well, he's Steve Eddington, and yeah, not deeply pleasant human being. He wasn't when he worked at the Telegraph, and he still isn't now. Just one of our archetypal race baiters. We'll come on to some of his mates soon. But he put up a vox pop where oh God, it's boring. Anyway, the latest sort of right-wing thing is the usual idea of degeneracy. Okay, ever since fascism became fascism, they've loved the idea that there are elements within society that are less worthy than others. Inevitably, it's a hierarchy. It's social Darwinianism, isn't it? Yeah. So some people are good and some people are bad. You can guess who the good ones are because they tend to be fairer than the others. Yeah, and I mean that in both senses of the word. Possibly. Anyway, Steve Ellington had managed to pick up on a fairly likeable young man. You can catch this video all over the internet. Did a bit of a vox pox with him, and then basically was a bit sneery because the bloke didn't know who Alfred the Great was. Which is fine, if you like, if you're Steve Eddington, because what Steve really is pointing out here, of course, is that he, as a black person, doesn't know things, and it just shows that he isn't assimilated. But the problem for Steve was, well, the bloke's brother piped up. You've plastered this video all over the social media channels, taking advantage of my autistic older brother for views and to push your weird anti-black narratives. As a news company that should be responsible, this shouldn't have been posted, but oh well. And yeah, an awful lot of people agreed with it, including various commentators on GB News, which we would have thought would have meant that Steve, Mr. E himself, would have kind of backed down a bit. But no, of course not, because he has to be right. How do we know he's white? Right? Well, he's a right-winger who's white, and they just always are. Always about everything. So he posted this up. I haven't seen so much hysteria over a vox pop in my life. You need to get out more. Well, that's what we do sometimes, interview the public. Sometimes they look good or bad or neutral. People can make up their own minds. I didn't trap him or force him to do an interview. I think that's what it's supposed to be. I asked the same questions to everyone. Endless virtue signalling nonsense. Yes, because people like me that get upset about, people like Steve posting tosh online and stirring up racial hatred, it's just virtual signalling. We don't believe it because everybody believes like the same thing that Steve does. Anyway, yesterday, just to get on a bit, his mates chimed in. We've got Connor Tomlinson for a start. Yeah, it's worthwhile just quoting in full. This is a Rorschach test. He seems like a nice man and calls Britain his home, but he's completely deracinated from our history and doesn't live among its people. He lives in London, mate, okay? And you will notice the choice phrase there, because Connor likes to use words like remigration because they sound nicer than deporting black people. But realistically, it's the same language that the NF were using in the 70s because it's exactly the same policies. Rupert Lowe could well have got himself voted as the head of the NF in the 1970s with the stuff that he comes out with. And, as I've said before, one has to feel sorry for poor old Paul Golding, who put in all those years of effort, and then you get these little upstarts coming along doing the same thing. He loves the areas of London rendered unrecognisable by decades of immigration and cultural displacement. Yes, he wouldn't like London if it was full of white people not like him. Apparently, the man is polite and friendly, but not a custodian of British culture. Well, neither are you, Connor. History or civilization, and how can he be expected to be when it isn't present around him? That's London, Connor, which the place where you and I came from. Anyway, in another time, another neighbourhood, he might well have been a member of our national tribe, worn a suit, served a community, met a nice English girl, and settled down, which is a lot more patronising than even I am. But instead, he's just another member of the multicultural UK, which imparts onto him nothing in particular to love or be grateful for. Yeah, and, again, ignoring the guy's obvious, well, diagnosis, if you like. I mean, you know, one look at this guy will tell you that he's likely to be on the spectrum. Now, I'm amazed that Connor and Steve and others that we might come on to don't pick up on that. But I think that's basically because they themselves are on that spectrum themselves. In that, the beauty of being autistic is that you want to see the world in very, very hard, crystalline shapes of good and bad. There are good people and there are bad people. There are black things and there are white things. And that makes your life so much easier, because then you don't realistically have to think about muddy, grey, adult things at all. Anyway, yes, we also had Harrison Pitt, who's another one of those nasty race-baiting boys. He's from the New Cultural Forum, and he gets to interview Steve Eddington, and sometimes Steve Eddington gets to interview Connor Tomlinson, and sometimes Connor Tomlinson gets to introduce Harrison. Yes, the gentleman seems nice chap, but Steve helps to show that he's anything but assimilated. Oh, what a lovely word that is. He was born in London, speaks English, not particularly fluently, you might say, but that's because of his particular apropos of nothing just about him, isn't it? Huguenot descending Brits are in all relevant respects invisible. Yeah, let's go back that far, shall we? The majority of people in the UK, yeah, wouldn't understand what that word means, but Harrison can, because he's very intelligent. Unfortunately, people like me do, and he is speaking tosh, because at the time we hated those gits being here, coming over here, yeah, with their prissy Protestant values, running away from the Catholics. Why don't they stay and fight, eh? Meanwhile, Eddington's interview associates Britain with its most conquered, colonised UK areas. Yes, let's call things degenerate, shall we? Yeah, that's a good word, isn't it? Yeah. We might say retarded, why not? And we can call the bloke that, can't we? Because loads of people in the comments were doing that. Yeah, Ishan clearly cares nothing for this country's host space. And we've got Dr. Rakib there, who is a right-wing commentator. But even for Harrison, it's too much to acknowledge that somebody that isn't the same colour as him might, have a valid opinion, because we all know that there are hard, crystalline truths in the world, and there are black things and there are white things, and some of them are good and some of them are just bad, and by God we're going to stick to that. Anyway, just on the basis of that, I got into a conversation on Twitter with Connor, because he was talking about the English and the way that the things that make you English. So I started to ask exactly what that meant. If you want to go on Twitter, you can have a look for it. It's pretty obvious the things that are mine. Managed to make a few people upset, because when I questioned as to what exactly being English was, they couldn't really answer me, but they were getting very cross that I obviously didn't understand and was doing it deliberately. Anyway, so I finally got this from Connor. Ethnicity does not mean race. Oh, that's good then. The French are white and they're not English. Okay. Albanians are white and they're not good neighbours. If you're Anglo-Saxon ancestry, you're English. No, you're not, are you? Anyway, if you're Celtic or if you have Celtic or Brittonic ancestry, you're British. Okay. If you're not, you're not. Okay. This is not a moral judgment of any other ethnicity, which is where he gets the kind of, no, I'm not really a racist thing, because he does get touchy about that, even though he is. It's just a fact about which we should not be confused. Okay, great. But at what point do people become English? At what point do people become assimilated? The autistic bloke on the street, at which point would he become English? At what point would it be okay for him to be regarded as English? And of course we all know the answer to that, to Connor and Harrison and Steve and the rest of them, and the answer is he can never be, because he's the wrong colour, at which point we just end up with the naturally very nasty racist little boys. Sorry, I just had to get that off my chest. I just find people like these are really obnoxious. Not because, they hold racist views. You meet loads of people that hold racist views. But just the fact that they're so prissy about it and they can't actually argue their corner. Yeah? If there's such a thing as being English, Tell me what it is. And if there is such a thing, that you can't tell me what it is, but nevertheless let's make some fudge notion about it, at what point after X number or X or Y, Z number of generations do people become English? At what point did the Huguenots properly assimilate? Was it their children or their children's children? I don't know. I would like Harrison to tell me. Maybe we could have one of those nice racial kind of diagrams the Nazis came out with, so we can see exactly where people are, yeah? Exactly what quarter of them, in terms of their grandparents, would mean that they would be, Volk, yeah? Yeah? At what point do you become Aryan? At what point do you become English? At what point do you become just a nasty, nasty, nasty right-wing political commentator who basically is just a fascist? And the answer with this lot is straight away. And they get paid for it. And they turn up on our screens as political commentators. And they poison the well with this stuff. They don't have anything to offer anybody who wanders around the streets of London. And I think more people should say it. But they won't, because of course then we won't get those tax cuts, will we? Do have a lovely day. Do enjoy your time off if you've got some. And if you haven't, I don't know, maybe go on strike. That might be an idea. Why not?